Amazing. Welcome, welcome everyone. We made it. Running a few minutes behind, mainly because, as you know, technology is usually our friend, but sometimes our best tester of patience and our best tester of some of the things that we're talking about today. Hope and optimism and gratitude. We're having people roll in. Jenny, so excited to have you here. We're having, it looks like we have 215, 217 people rolling in from all over. And as you do join us, go ahead and drop in the chat where you're coming from, who you are, and what you're grateful for today. Why not? Just drop it in so we can set the stage. Just for your context, Jenny, it's always fun to like rattle these off. We got someone coming from Milwaukee in your neighborhood. We got people coming in from Sarasota, Florida, Massachusetts, Oregon, New Jersey, New York, Nova Scotia, Canada, Ohio, Washington, DC, Katy, Texas, Wisconsin, North Carolina. Those were all in a row. All of those were totally different places,
Wow.
literally back to back to back. Pretty exciting. I love seeing these locations, and I love just being reminded that, well, technology can challenge us. It also gives us access to a whole world of people who are tuning in with a common message
Yeah.
today. Indiana's in the building. People are coming in from the Bay Area, California. We got Sandy Ginger from Las Vegas, Nevada. She is a webinar MVP, Jenny, just so you know. She's on most all of them.
Okay.
New Jersey, Manitou Springs, Colorado. I love that crew there. What an incredible group. Richland, Washington. Incredible. Well, we are so excited to have you today. Dr. Jenny in the building. She hails from Wisconsin. You played hoops in Wisconsin, as I understand that correctly. Played hoops at Lake Forest, and you earned
Yep.
your doctorate at Loyola in Chicago. You were a principal and now an educational consultant, and you're here today talking about, you frame it, the life-changing power of gratitude, optimism, and hope. So grateful to have you here. Jenny, talk to us about how we change our lives for the better with these key ingredients.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor and a privilege, and I'm so humbled by the opportunity to connect with you today. And I want to get right to the amazing power of hope, gratitude, and optimism. These are literally game changers, life changers. They hardwire in our brain differently when we practice them, and we show up differently in the world when we have these habits in place. So there's kind of three parts to what I'm going to share with you guys today. One is just some statistics on the power of gratitude and hope and the power of optimism. And then I'm going to talk in the second part about just habit stacking. How do we actually do that in relevance to our current time, what we're living in right now? And then I'm just going to wrap up with, because I just have such a passion for this topic, just some of my personal story and how that relates to the current situation. So I will get right to it. Gratitude, as I wrote, I had to actually look this up. I wrote a book with some colleagues called Thrive. Last year, we would have had no idea that a pandemic was coming, but each of us share in that book, Thrive, our struggle and hardship, a hard challenge in our life that we went through and how we overcame it, and then the habits and things that we're doing. And my first chapter in that book is called Self-Care as an Educator. And then the second chapter I write about navigating trauma and talking about just small t and big T trauma and just how that all plays out. The first thing that's really important to just contextualize is I want to just say that I'm talking to you today as someone I think uniquely qualified to address the topic, because I've gone through some really ridiculously challenging situations, and I'll share those in just a few minutes. As we get started, though, I just want everybody to feel comfortable, to focus, acknowledge where you are with a pen and paper. Feel free to ask questions in the chat, lean in and participate. I just wanted to set a community of learner agreements as we start, and just so grateful for your participation and the precious gift of time that you're honoring and giving in this particular session. I'm so grateful for that. So lean in, participate, ask questions. I love that dynamic. And one of the things that's going to be really helpful for you to know about focusing with me is the age of our students equals the number of minutes they cognitively attend. So as an adult learner, that taps out for us at about 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm going to be asking you throughout our time today just to answer a couple questions, jot a couple notes down, and we're just going to play if you're up for that. So participate as you feel would best connect with you. And I do want to start with just everybody taking a kind of a deep breath and just kind of settling in. Just maybe find your feet curled to the ground and just kind of let your shoulders relax, sit up straight. And I know I could use this, so I'm going to take 3 deep breaths as we get going today. You can join me if you'd like. I'm just going to take 3 deep breaths in. I'm going to hold it. I'm going to breathe in for 4, hold it for 3, and then let it out for 4. Let's try that. Ready? And we'll go again. Great. And last one. Okay. So if you feel comfortable, just close your eyes and think of something that you're grateful for this day, morning, afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. Just remember all of the tailwinds that you have. You have maybe a roof over your head right now. You have food on the table. You have your basic necessity, your needs met. You have the beauty and the privilege of technology. You have family members, people that love you. You have your students, people that are connecting with you, your own kids. You have a larger community circle around you. Just take in for a minute all of the blessings. Maybe you're in a place of blue skies and budding springtime or hotter weather coming your way. Maybe it's a rainy day, or maybe we even have someplace where it's snowing in May. Wherever that is, just take that in and just be so grateful for where we are right now in this moment. 2 years ago, I was the person on the screen that was bald, sick, and nearly dead. This is a topic that gratitude and optimism and hope is not something that I'm just casually speaking about here this morning. It is a lifeline. It's a way that I live my life now, and I don't casually interact with it anymore. I was somebody that always had gratitude journals and I wrote things down, but the busyness of life and the hustle and bustle of 3 kids and a professional life and all of these things, which I think teachers and people out in the world right now are facing, workers are facing this as they gather their own students, they're working, their kids. We're getting collapsed on boundaries in a lot of our homes right now with this pandemic. So that was me speaking probably 150 days a year, running around the country, and I had a huge health wake-up call. And that's what I write about in the book, Thrive. I write about the worst chapter, the worst year of my life, 2018, finding out that I had cancer, breast cancer. I went through months and months of not knowing what was going to happen with that particular diagnosis. You just stay in the moment and do the next right thing. And I think that's appropriate for where we're at today. We're going to finish out the year strong. There's peak experiences, and then there's finishing strong. And so I share that with you because I think everyone is touched by their health every day. And so the nutrients, how we feed ourselves, but not only that, it's the mental, the emotional, the physical, the spiritual journey of just knowing that if your anxiety is ratcheting up, taking action right away to find calm and peace and connection. So this photo, this is 2 years ago, which is mind-boggling. But these are my family and kids, my husband, Todd. This is what we do now with gratitude. We call it out every day. We say it in all different ways. What was a win today? What was a high, low, and a high? That's a very specific activity I do with my kids, that they end on a high after they share about their day. just so that we're always reframing things and we're training ourselves to be grateful and be hopeful. Optimism has a very, very specific definition. It's a belief rooted in the idea that things will be better on the other side. And that definition is very important to this whole conversation of hope and gratitude. So let's go for it. What do you want to say? Type it in the chat. If you're not grateful for anything right now, you're thinking to yourself, like I wasn't grateful. That didn't make it on my gratitude list the day that I found out over the phone. Yes, this is a cancerous situation, but I could look forward to, okay, on January 2nd, we're going to meet with the doctors. On January 12th, we're going to have a surgery. Then we're going to find out what the oncotype testing tells us about that particular mass that's removed. On February 1st, my dad actually passed away. I wasn't grateful that day, but I was looking forward to my next doctor's visit and walking through that and his funeral and celebrating his life. And so in a series of a very short amount of time, some major traumatic things were happening in my life. And these two things really got me through that. So Houston, would you like to share one of your gratitudes or something you're looking forward to?
I would love to. I was just typing into the chat. I'm grateful for my mom's health. She has navigated stage 4 colon cancer and is a little over 3.5 years cancer free. So that's something that's persistent gratitude in my life. I'm grateful for purposeful work right now that feels motivating and worthwhile, and grateful for a community of friends that allow me to feel like myself.
I love that. That's beautiful. Here's the thing about gratitude, and I love seeing what's coming up in the chat. I'll let Houston, do you want to say a couple more? I'll let you process a few and then you can pick some in a minute or two. I'll ask you, is that cool?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, great. So here I am walking through this season of life 2 years ago. To top it all off, we had moved. We were living in a different community. And I'm being just very upfront and vulnerable with you guys. It was a really tricky time because I didn't have my squad, my team of people around me in terms of my long-term friendships. That was another dynamic that's really challenging. And I think about that in terms of isolation that a lot of people are experiencing right now, a loneliness and an isolation that can be really challenging. So what do? We address what we can address right off the bat. And I want you to think about this for yourself and with your families and with your students, that gratitude sets a whole new tone for how we show up in a particular space. If we can't find something to be grateful for, we can think, you know what, I have something to look forward to. Those are sister emotions that play really powerfully into learning. Everybody out there on this call has a story. You have something that you have faced and you have gone into it in a way that has been these two ideas going into your life and practicing them will set you up for when something really hard happens. So it's important to just practice it, for me anyway, as the daily practice. People who are grateful have 87% more productivity at work. When you have something to look forward to, you are 20% more likely to be empathetic. There's a whole bunch of statistics here. I'm reading off the chapter of the book Thrive. I just list a whole bunch of those stats because it's good to see in numbers, like how much does this really matter? And you can feel it in your heart and your soul and your body when you're in that grateful space. So there's a lot of emotions every day that we're experiencing. And emotional intelligence or emotional EQ is something that's really important in this conversation about hope and gratitude. We're not hardwired to wake up and be grateful. It is a learned, coachable, practiced skill. And this first came across my, if you guys remember this movie, Inside Out, it's a really great movie about a kid that moves to a different community. She lives in San Francisco. There's all sorts of things going on with her separating from her friends. And there's these voices, right, in our head. And what Paul Ekman, the gentleman on the slide just before this, I watched this movie, by the way. This is a great quarantine movie if you have kids. I have a kindergartner, third and fifth grader. This movie probably is 2 or 3, maybe 4 years old by now. But in this movie, I was baffled and just could not believe how clearly they did some of the neuroscience of emotions and behind the scenes there. So Paul Ekman is the person that actually was the consultant behind the movie. And these emotions that he connected were agreed upon by 149 emotional scientists who've studied this their whole career, that they could agree anger, fear, disgust, sadness, joy, and surprise are hardwired in the human brain. So one of the things I want to mention is that if you ever are feeling sad or disgusted or angry or fearful, that's normal. That's hardwired in our brain. And we can also feel joy and surprise. And we can also practice kind of those blue box ideas of humility, forgiveness, empathy, optimism, kindness, patience, gratitude. But the main things that are playing on the piano of our brain are those hardwired skills. So one of the things I love saying is that our students are not hardwired to show up grateful. And some of us all of us, no matter what your socioeconomic status is, all of us can benefit from practicing these blue box strategies. It's one of the reasons I love Character Strong, and I loved being connected with you guys are focused on social, emotional, and character, because these are teachable, learnable habits that we can practice daily. It also reminds me of the optimal learning, 3 positives, smiles, affirmations, kudos for every 1 negative error, Barbara Fredrickson's work. Whenever we do this in our daily life and we practice gratitude and optimism, it changes our life. There's study after study after study that shows us the mirror neurons, when the emotions, you experienced it in your life. Somebody's in a bad mood, you kind of can catch that unless you have your hazmat suit on of knowing that's about them, or you have those relationship skills just to reconnect with people in a positive way. So one of the things I want to share with you guys is about some of my strategies for gratitude. If you or your kids are not feeling grateful, the best thing you can do is just get up and move. So go for a walk in the morning. If you're sitting down, right, and your kids, they've tapped out, there's 10 minutes, 15 minutes has gone by, they're not engaged with their work anymore, stand up and go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and do like a dance party. Have kids move, have them stretch, have them go outside and get some fresh air. What this slide is showing you, and I just love really seeing hard evidence of the neurogenesis here. What's happening on the left side of the screen is, and this is from Richard Restack's, he wrote about this in The Secret Life of the Brain. There's a bunch of places that you can find this data, but basically you can see that there's new cells. Neurogenesis means the growth of new cells. So on the left, this is before exercise. The control group in the study was with 40-year-old men who'd never had an exercise program in their entire life. They watched them for the next several decades. And just after 30 minutes of exercise, you can see there's yellow dots on the right side of the screen. Those yellow dots are new neurons in the hippocampus. There's actually some red and yellow dots that you can see there. What does that mean? That's great news. That means if I'm thinking differently and I'm moving my body differently, my brain, my body, my life is literally changing. And some of you are thinking, of course, but it's nice to kind of see the power of the science behind this and the actual numbers and what it looks like. We couldn't do that even several decades ago. So it's a fun thing to kind of check out. This is another way that movement changes the blood flow in your body when you get up and move. Anybody ever come up with a great idea while you're walking or in the shower, or just moving changes the blood flow in your brain? We can think better and connect better. So one of my big habits, I'm getting into the habit stacking portion of our conversation here. Gratitude and optimism, practice them every day. Other habits that you can stack up in front of you are about movement. Your brain is not going to say good, bad, right, or wrong. This is not a moral issue. This is your brain. Your brain is just scientifically going to hardwire up with cognitive training, nutrition, the exercise, the intentional adaptive strategies. Those things will hardwire up in your brain. And then on the other side, if there's other things going on in your brain that are not helping it, malnutrition, toxins, neglecting your health, your relationships, if there's addictions that come up, those things are also going to get hardwired. So neuroplasticity, neurogenesis is real. The way in which our brain is wired is up to us each and every day. Neuroplasticity is how the brain changes. So let's talk about the current kind of situation. We have another really cool part of our brain called the amygdala. Most people know it's a tiny almond-shaped part of our brain. But again, like if you're sitting too long, or if there's some kind of unrest, some kind of challenge that you're facing, or let's say you get in an argument with someone and there's a big upset, or there's something that's bothering you and it's commandeering your working memory. You think, okay, I'm going to set that aside, but it keeps coming up. Keep being bothered by it. All that's happening in a place called the amygdala. And I like to think of the amygdala as like a soda can analogy. It's like if I've got my Diet 7-Up here, my favorite drink besides water, and I start shaking that up, and then I don't address it, but then I get agitated again and again and again and again. Pretty soon, if I were to take that top off, what's going to happen? An explosion, right? So if you or your kids are upset about something, the best thing to do is to step back and step away from the situation. When you get flooded, no good learning is going to happen. Nothing good is going to come out of that particular interaction. How much is the amygdala connected to the rest of the brain? It's connected to everything. So why do I come up with my best comebacks a day later? Because in the moment I was flooded, and then the next, I think, oh, that's what I should have said. Or if I want to make amends or make an apology, I've got to think about things differently. And I can't do that in the moment when my brain is flooded with information that's coming from the amygdala. That's not going to work. Okay, so.
Jenny, could you go back one, because there's something on that slide that resonates with me a ton.
Please
that highlighted part where you're talking about that when amygdala is overactivated, we see a 20% increase minimum in stress, which translates to 75% less empathy. That's a scary correlation to me. Could you talk more about that?
Absolutely. It's why we've just all experienced this, right? Where we're not kind to someone in our life that we love, a child, a spouse, mom, dad. Thank goodness we can go back and make amends and recommit and connect. But basically, this is why people go into fight or flight mode. They go into survival mode. This is the person that, they do things that they just wouldn't have done before. Once they can calm down, then the cerebral cortex opens up and you have your higher order thinking skills at play. So for example, the CEO of our brain, the frontal lobe, the decision maker that goes, okay, this is going to be over soon. I'm going to make it through today. Then I can tackle this next thing tomorrow. When the amygdala is completely flooded, that doesn't make good decisions. Basically, we just don't show up as our best selves. And it's a really, Houston, you're asking me a question that I actually know too much about. So I'm getting into all these different studies that are popping up in my brain about like police officers and this and that. And that's not the topic of what is here. It's just a really good idea to notice with your own kids that when things are going awry, look at this as like neurobiology, that there's something going on that's bigger
Mm.
than you can sort of manage in the moment, and take your best action to restrain and tongue and pen. That's one of my favorite sayings, restrain and tongue and pen. If you're upset, write it out, write it out, write it out. Just write your feelings out. Get outside, take a walk, reconvene at a later date.
Yeah, and from a practical lens, right, that strategy of saying, learning how to say, I need 30 minutes or I need 90 minutes. Because if you can start to become aware that you're in that space, that I just love this so much, because, so much what we talk about around kindness or empathy, I'm so fascinated in like what gets in the way of these things that we know are good in the world.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a profound reminder that, especially right now, Dr. Michelle Borba's work, she says the biggest barriers for empathy are fear, narcissism, and anxiety. So we're experiencing collective increase in those. So I love that today's conversation certainly isn't just about the barriers. We're talking about the antidotes.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to note that every single person is dealing with the stages of grief right now. They're dealing
Yeah.
with denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And even in one day, I can wake up and go, okay, I accept the school year is canceled and I've got this many more days and da, 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 da. And then I can go into like anger, and that's normal. The question is, what do I do with it? And how do I, like you said, what is the antidote to showing up, to keep showing up in your life? Character strong, socially, emotionally intelligent, having awareness, saying, you know what, I'm going to press pause and I'm going to come back to this in 24 or 48 hours. Giving yourself permission to do that. You guys all know, or I want you to become aware of, what are your patterns? Do you like to wake up early in the morning? By 8 o'clock, if somebody asks me to do something, I'm going to start crying, but if you want something done, I'm up at 5 a.m. Like we have to understand our patterns and our routines during this time of like, okay, my bucket is full. My plate is full. I need to ask for what I need and ask for help. This is really hard for a lot of us as teachers and moms. We think we got it all together. We got it going on. We got to ask for help, keep that amygdala backed off, and take breaks. Yeah.
People are in the chat saying how much they love the visual example of the soda. And I think it is so relevant to what you're saying. It's like, I would never open a soda after I'd just been shaken in the middle of the kitchen or over the couch, right? Like, I need to walk outside. I need to find a safe place to release that built up energy. And I know I've deviated you, and you're sort of, to get us back on track, that idea of know your patterns, because habits and the habits that we stack start to help us cultivate a lifestyle of antidotes.
Absolutely. So I'm just bringing up like the evening morning ritual thing, because you've got to know yourself, and then you have to know the people in your family. As this shelter in place thing is going on, okay, this person, it never is a win to stay up after this. Like, sticking to this ritual always wins. It's never like, oh, that was a great idea to keep XYZ kid up after their bedtime, or not have to do this particular routine or ritual. Now, there's a difference between novelty and ritual. A lot of us in this quarantine time, it's like, okay, we're walking around the block, the same thing. It's like, okay, now this is boring. We want to do something different. We want to have some routine, but we also want to have some rituals, some fun things to look forward to. And that's where that gratitude and optimism as sister emotions come in as well. I think what I wanted to say on this one is, just with students, with ourselves, as we get into habits, we can coerce ourselves for so long to do something, but we can't motivate anybody to do anything they don't already want to do. And I think this is really important, is this whole sort of hashtag I've been using a lot is, I'm doing it with you. Nobody is the expert in this time. We are all navigating this as best we can. And we do it with each other, and we can be leaders, but we need to help each other as we navigate it, coming from within. There's a really great neurotransmitter. It's called dopamine. It really gets us. It's that like, yes, that good feeling. That's what gratitude and optimism should feel like. It should feel like this good feeling, or this like calm feeling, like serotonin. We want to fire and wire those neurotransmitters more than ever. They really, really help our brain stay healthy and focused. And there's a balance to all of that. So what are some obstacles that get in the way of like setting up a gratitude practice or any type of change? Change has a predictable series of steps for most staff or most people. These are the 5 I think a lot of us have embraced over this quarantine time. I was just saying to my husband this morning, my kids showed up yesterday, today, they know exactly what to do. Everybody's like signing in for their attendance, doing all their stuff. And I said, you know what? They've just totally engaged and embraced the change. And now we have 2 weeks left of it, because the first was the fear of the unknown, the paralysis, and then how do I do this? How do I navigate this online platform? How do I do this way with all of their schoolwork and such? I think a lot of teachers are experiencing that as well. How do I shift my paradigm and ask for help and support on how to do some of these things that are very new to our teacher profession, because we're social animals, we're people, we want to connect. But these are some normal change responses. I want to make sure that I say that, because if you're fearful, that's not bad. It's not, it's normal. That's how your brain is wired. Like, let's just get back to that. It's not personal. I think a lot of educators take things personally, and it stumps them, and we can let that go. We always have 2 choices to kind of embrace where do you want to be. Here's a great question. And this kind of leads into the idea of trauma. A lot of kids are experiencing, so there's trauma. It's a huge topic, but I bring it up here because in my own personal pandemic of 2 years ago, I have a little bit of agency during this time, just because I went through a lot of counseling, a lot of changes in my own behavior, a lot of looking at what really does matter, a lot of why do I keep doing this people-pleasing behavior? How can I set some healthy boundaries? Boundaries are what's okay, what's not okay. I wanted to bring this up, the critical incidences of stress. And, it happened back when Columbine happened in 1999, April 20th. I remember I was a school principal in Gurnee, Illinois, and one of my colleagues was the middle school principal that housed all of the kids from Columbine at his middle school. And after this incident happened, people started to spend money on saying we should have on-site counselors on school grounds when there's traumatic incidences that happen. The data actually shows from 2004 to 2009, once people started studying this, because it was happening all over the country, school boards, sheriffs, county, city councils started making decisions about this. Here's what I'm getting at. I just showed you a bunch of slides on the amygdala, slowing down, taking some space. This also shows you that that's a good idea. When you meet somebody that has an upsetting situation that has happened to them, your best thing to do is to not, like in this burning building example, you don't say to that person, well, where are you going to live? That makes everything worse. What you want to do in a traumatic situation is, what does a person need? Water, a blanket, a hug, just somebody to sit with them and be with them. And so I didn't give you a chance to answer your prediction on that, but it's actually a bad idea to have on-site counseling or immediate sort of processing. It's actually a bad idea. And we know about it because of the neuroscience, but we also know about it from the studies that came after Columbine. What the studies do show is that 2 weeks after a traumatic incident, people have a better capacity to process. So Houston, you were asking about what gets in the way. Time, approach, But we can reduce that with hope, gratitude, and with how people are approached in challenging, uncertain times. And this is my memo to all of us. We can't think, feel, or act ordinary and expect extraordinary results. It's not going to happen. We're going to actually have to do the work to heal and to become proactive about our health, our gratitude, our optimism, our hope. It's not going to just happen out of thin air. How do we do it? We gotta, I think this quarantine time, I put this in here because I feel that the quarantine time has given everybody a chance to kind of pull weeds and plant some seeds with, what relationships matter most, which ones are providing fruit. This is something I talk about with in the book Thrive as well, causing community. Start to look at the communities where I actually want to create like amygdala awareness. When you leave that community, do you feel like dopamine, serotonin, like, these people, they get me, they know me. This is a positive place to interact. Go towards those good feelings. And all quality relationships require it. It's like, let's schedule. If you have people in your life that you haven't had a conflict with, you need to schedule a conflict, right? Because it's not normal to not have a conflict. It's just that we have to pull weeds and plant seeds towards the things that are most fulfilling and gratifying for us personally. And then we can foster change in our own leadership, including people in those discussions. I'm saying this one mostly for school leaders, building that collective capacity. And just, it starts with the fourth one there, which is the biggest part of this particular strand of what I'm teaching. Is it starts with self-awareness, knowing who we are, knowing what fuels us. Only then can we start to build a collective teacher efficacy, which we know from Hattie's research just blows through the achievement gap like nothing other. When you get a like-minded group of people believing in the same direction that something's possible, kids' achievement you can gain 3 years in 1 year. I'm bringing that up because I'm on a lot of different phone calls and being interviewed on WCCO and a couple newscasts. And the question is will our kids catch up? Yes, they will, with specific protocols. But the leaders have to start and know where they are first with that to facilitate that. So, Houston, I just rolled right through our session here really quickly, but I'd love to take more questions or just talk about anything else that might be useful or helpful.
Absolutely. Let me start with gratitude for you. I just love the approach, the gift, the rare gift and approach of data with a soul, right? It's one of the reasons I love Brene Brown and Jamil Zaki, people who are researchers at heart, but do it with story and passion and compassion, both. So gratitude for you first, and optimism coming out of this, which is to say, looking towards the fall. My guess is, as people drop questions, if you like, into the chat, I have some questions coming out of it right away, which is, what are some of those, looking towards the fall? You had a couple of slides there talking about sort of like cultivating through micro decisions and micro goals, being able to accomplish bigger things. Yeah, absolutely. So as people are looking ahead towards the fall, you also, I think all of this wraps into that idea. You're talking about that trauma response, jumping right in. So what are some, maybe what are your top one do not and your top one do going into the fall?
Going into the fall, I would just say start slow and build those processes and places for kids to, like, every day start with your ritual, your morning meeting. And I mean this for high school kids too, like something you're grateful for, write it in a notebook. This isn't just for little kids. This is for all, this is for grownups. This is for all of, like, if you want to have the healthiest, happiest brain possible, these are non-negotiables. So start small with your habits, your rituals, your routines. Please take the opportunity for kids to process in a variety of ways. And I think writing is one of the best ways to do this. I recently picked up The Artist's Way, which is
Mhm.
just morning pages of where you just wake up and you're just writing. Again, I don't know exactly how that would translate into your classroom, because what I like to do is I like to actually do what I'm going to talk about, and then I would do it with my students. I would find a way to go, okay, guys, we're just going to write, and again, depending on my content area and that kind of thing. But I would have kids do something verbally, see it, say it, or do something that focuses on gratitude and optimism. You're going to have people coming in fearful, just as a normal thing. And so some people are going to just approach that differently. But you can do a lot by just deciding in your head that this is going to work out. We're going to be okay. Like, we've faced challenging things before, and we can do this as long as we don't try to do it solo. So those would be some simple ideas, Houston. And I would say the biggest thing I would say, though, is educators, you take care of yourself first. You cannot put the oxygen mask on. You have to put the oxygen mask on first before assisting others. And your students are going to be looking at you like the flight attendant when there's turbulence.
Mm.
We look at the flight attendant, we go, okay, is she upset? Because if she's upset, then I'm going to get upset. But if she's okay, then I'm going to be okay. I made a conscious decision during my cancer journey to just tell my kids, even though I didn't know, I was like, we got this. We're going to be okay. Then I do my processing separate. But when
Mhm.
with little kids, that was something that I chose to do. Like, we got this. It's going to be the hair's going to grow back and all these things. I think it's just a really important thing to know that no matter what life circumstance throws at you, it's just this mindset of like, I believe in God, so I would say God is working things out for your advantage. It's just things are working out as they're supposed to. Even that, and that's hard when it's hard, but I really deep down believe that really good things are going to come out of this, and that people are learning lots of new things in the process.
I just read a great list of 68 bits of unsolicited advice from someone who just turned 68. And to your final point there, his final of the 68 is: the universe is conspiring behind your back to make you a success.
That's
This will
right.
be much easier if you embrace this as true.
Yes.
He also has this beautiful, the second to last one, and both of these feel so relevant. Over the long term, the future is decided by optimists. To be an optimist, you don't have to ignore all the many problems we create. You just have to imagine improving our capacity to solve them.
Yes. Amen. That's it right there. I love it. The
68.
universe is conspiring towards your greatness, your goodness. I absolutely agree. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, well, it's fun when things in your world start to connect. Talk about a little bit more, because I've been reading this book recently called An Emotional Education, and they use that word ritual quite often, and I really like the way they frame it. And you talk about habit stacking. So some people are asking about, like, what can we do to start to cultivate? What's some of your favorite gratitude practices, or what are some of those habits that we could start to stack? Where do we start? And then what's step one and step two?
Step one would be grabbing a notebook and a pen and just starting a practice each day of gratitude. Step two is you can do things even just like gratitude with your heart, gratitude with your head, gratitude with your mouth. You can do some movements. You can do the deep breathing exercise that we did at the very beginning of this. There's some visualizations. If you want to hit me up on social media, I can post a bunch of visualizations there for you to, there's just like a clearing of your mind kind of thing. It's like, imagine everything right now. And it's a visualization that is really powerful to have somebody read it to you, or you can read it. Hit me up there if you want to check out any of that. The next thing to do that's really, really powerful is to build 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 other people around you that are doing that. That can be a family of origin, that can be kids in your class, that can be colleagues, that
Yeah.
can be a good friend. Just start this habit of like texting each other a gratitude evening, to add community to your gratitude. So you want to start with yourself and start with some of those habits. Morning, I like to do morning, noon, and night. Well, those are the 3 examples I gave you. So a morning gratitude practice, anything with visualization or movement. At the dinner table, you do the high, low, high. You're going to name your high, name a low. All right, what else was a high? 3 things. Everybody can do that. I got a 6-year-old, 8-year-old, and 11-year-old who are well-versed in that, so I know it works. I would encourage you to ask your teenagers those same questions too. And then, yeah, I mean, those would be some immediate things to start with. If you are noticing that you're resentful, afraid, really upset, is there some kind of trauma that you got to look at with some outside help? And always take on outside help if you need it. Reach out to people. The same brain that caused the problem isn't the one that can maybe solve it, but it can with different inputs. So I would offer that in terms of where to start. This can become a whole huge thing. At some of the high schools that I work in, we do Thankful Thursdays. And I had high school students write over 1,000 thank you notes last year and mail those out. And like, it can just become this whole thing that has some content, writing a letter. Where do you put that? All, how does that whole thing work? We had some little tutorials on that, but it just starts to solidify on a weekly basis is that this is what we do.
I love, this is what we do. Is it, what said Aristotle? We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not an action, but a habit. This is the line I read recently, Jenny. I think you'll like. It's from a book called An Emotional Education. And they say the best rituals don't so much impose upon us ideas that we are opposed to, but take us back to ideas that we are in deep agreement with, yet have allowed to lapse. They are externally mandated routes to inner authenticity. I love that premise of what ritual does to us over time. And someone actually asked, could you go back to the slide with hardwired versus practiced skills?
Sure.
Because I think it's relevant to this conversation, right? Which is we know that we want gratitude in our life, optimism, hope, but the practice of them, I think is it back one more? Oh, a couple more. This was good stuff. Can you back even one more? 2 more? There it is. Just the premise that ritual allows us to bring into our life things that aren't hardwired, things that we know to be true, but require external routes to inward truth.
It's just a brilliant phrase, brilliant phrase that you're sharing. And I wholeheartedly agree. Yeah. I
have a few other questions here, Jenny, if you're up for them.
Absolutely.
For school counselors, do you have any thoughts on how to educate our site admin or staff about how to best support kids in these practices or coming back to school?
Absolutely.
You have the role, the education of, in many ways, a counselor plus the experience of an admin. So talk to us about how to navigate that.
My particular background is as a teacher, principal, and the school counseling part or the social worker part of me comes in with my training with Brene Brown's work. So I would, with executive teams and school boards, do the book Dare to Lead, which is about practicing vulnerability and practicing boundaries. And vulnerability there's so many myths around vulnerability, and there's so many myths around just the emotional agency of what it takes to be a leader. Those would be, I would grab those right away. You can do those as a book study right off the bat with your admin team. I'm happy to, support anybody in that regard, but Brene Brown has on her website, everything is there for free. Handouts, books, study guides. Just everything is there at your fingertips. Some of the times what I do is I just consult superintendents and walk through how they would do that with school board members. Sometimes it's just nice to have an outside person facilitating some of that. who's not invested and steeped into the culture. It can keep it really, really clean with boundaries and culture and cognition. But that work is absolutely, I mean, the woman is on Netflix, friends. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's pretty,
She's the best. She's good at what she does.
there's just no one else. And, you know, she was generous enough to certify and train a bunch of people, because we need a Brene Brown, or someone Brene Brown trained. We need that in every single school. We need multiple people like that, bringing this collective energy to that conversation, because we come up with our best thinking in a safe, supportive environment. And like I said earlier, we can't get to our best thinkings when we're just walking around with our amygdala, fearful, upset, angry, disgusted. Like, it's just, I mean, it's just a recipe for disaster. So we start with ourselves. We can't control other people. We just say, hey, this is what I know I need to do. And that kind of energy will create a ripple at your school. For those people out there, I was once like you, where I was the only one at my school doing any of this. And I just want to encourage those people. You know, the person out there from DeForest, Wisconsin with 24 Twitter followers. I love that. They sent me a message yesterday. I'm like, go, go, go. I'm just cheering you on. Just get one other person on your team, but start with yourself and it'll ripple.
Plant seeds. Plant seeds and pull weeds.
Yep.
It's the work over time. Someone was asking, because you've recommended a couple of great books, Brene included, but some other ones that you referenced that are a bit on the more scientific side. Any other books that you love? Seems like you're a reader. You love digging into that stuff. So what would be some of your other favorite recommendations?
There's a really great book out. Oh, there's so many. Well, I'm going to make a shameless plug for my own book, Thrive.
Yeah, you should. Absolutely.
Which you can buy on Amazon, or you can buy it at my website, jennyseverson.com/shop. I encourage you to buy it from my website, because I'm donating all the proceeds to our local food shelf. And, but there's, you know, here's the thing that I do. I read a lot, but I like to call up the neuroscientists and actually talk to them about the study, because if I'm going to say anything out loud, I want to make sure that you have the gold standard information. We have to be careful about seeing things on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter that stuff is actually vetted. So I'm always very cautious about that, anything that I'm going to share with you. I learned that from my mentor and friend, Dr. Eric Jensen, who's on the Society of Neuroscience and just been a long time, just rock star educator, and made a difference for so many people in the world. But I'm reading, right now I'm just doing The Artist's Way. I'm doing, there's a great book called Brainwashed, which is a father-son MD team, just talking about health and wellness, and they give a lot of good science in there. I mentioned Barbara Fredrickson's work. Anything by Brene Brown is a slam dunk. If you're not a reader, get her podcast. I think she saved me about 12 years of therapy the other day on her podcast with Harriet Lerner on how to apologize, what apologizing is all about. And yeah, those would be some of the recommendations off the top of my head. Again, I'd love to connect. Good ones. Yeah. I'd love to connect with everybody on social media. If you have other ideas or questions, I'm always happy to dialogue.
Yeah, please. If you want to put that slide back up so people can get a hold of you and follow, that would be amazing. Jenny, thank you so much for your hope and optimism and gratitude today. Lots of people in here saying this is so good. People are so excited to take this back into the work. Even just the mindset in our own lives, what we do with our kids, with ourselves. Earlier you mentioned that the movie, Pixar movie,
Inside Out.
Inside Out, thank you. You said that was a good one for kids, but there's a good one for all of us. And a reminder that this work is for all of us. People in the chat saying, thank you, fantastic, just what I needed this week. So a huge thank you from us and your continued work. We know walking out of, I think probably the more severe the trauma. I like how you reference your personal pandemic. But the more intense some of this is, the more opportunities we have to go the other way, right? And that's not a short switch we flip. It's a practice that we cultivate over time.
Yeah.
So what's your final statement of hope for us today?
Hope is a focus, and where the attention goes, the energy flows. So put your time, effort, and energy into things that lift you and others up. Yeah.
That's the ticket.
Thank
So
you.
well said, Jenny.
Yeah,
Thank you for being here.
great, so glad to meet you and connect. Thank you so much for having me.
We'll do it again sometime.
Sounds
For
good.
those of you who want to learn more, you can find us at characterstrong.com. You can find Jenny's website we put here into the chat. So please go check out the book, follow her online. She's posting great stuff always. Can't wait to hang out with you on the next one. See you all very soon.
Thank you.